Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. This is the news on Thursday, the 6th of April. Very simple stuff, isn't it? It's the date, but wow, we love it every single day. We've got loads of stuff to get through today. Napoli duo targeted by Ten Hag. Manchester United eyeing up a couple of Napoli stars from this young, exciting, vibrant Napoli team. We'll get into that. We've also got a little bit of reflection on last night's win. Ten Hag has spoken after the game about a couple of crucial things. A bit of news on Martial, a little bit of a sly dig against De Gea again. We'll have a look at all of those as well. And later on, we've got a little bit of talk about the Glazers, who again, they still want 6 billion, but at the same time, it looks as though we're getting into a position where they may well be happy to sell Manchester United. So we'll get into all of that. But before any of that, if you're watching the video, please hit the like button. Helps us out. It's very simple, isn't it? Just hit the like button. You like the video, like the button. Good morning, everyone. Moose on the Loose says, morning all. Good morning. Solo says, good morning, Joe. Good morning. No Jay, no weather update. All right, then. Here's your weather update. Thursday, the 6th of April. Cloudy, but warmish. Ooh, not bad in Manchester today. Not too much wind. It's a lovely little day. Right, let's start with last night then. So Ten Hag spoke about Martial, gave us a little bit of an update on why he didn't start the game. Yesterday he said he's still not game fit. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? Still not game fit. He made his first appearance in 78 days in a second half substitute in the 2-0 defeat to Newcastle on Sunday. Obviously, he's not ready to be starting games yet. He says, no, otherwise he was an option, but I don't think in this moment he's game fit enough to have a start, Ten Hag replied when asked why Martial was on the bench. Also, there is prevention. Obviously, when we see Martial's record over the last years, you have to be really careful to plan it. So I don't want to take that risk because I know when he's on the pitch, he has a great impact on our performance. It's slightly, I don't want to say worrying because a player coming back from injury shouldn't be a worrying sign. But this whole thing of looking at his injury record over the last few years, you have to be really careful. And it's not the case that Martial only ever gets injured in the first few games back from a previous injury. He can get injured at any time. So I wonder whether Ten Hag's thinking, I mean, we'll get to some, obviously, the transfer gossip later on, but that maybe, you can't have a player where you're constantly worried about him being injured. Even someone like Marcus, who has played through a lot of injuries and certainly has suffered injuries over the last few seasons, you don't go into every game week thinking, where's Marcus? Like, he had time off when he had serious injuries or when he broke his back or when he had, surgery. But otherwise, he'll turn up, he'll limp about a bit, but he'll still put in a shift and get you a goal. Martial is almost the opposite, where even when he's fit, you don't know if he looks fit. And, and obviously Ten Hag is talking about him needing a lot of time and a lot of consideration, and hopefully that's something that as he gets more minutes in his legs, as he gets back to full fitness, we won't have to worry about. Because realistically, if you want a player at any level, even if he's a sub or rotation player, look at Gabriel Jesus at City. A rotation striker still plays 30 games a season. It doesn't mean that you play 14 games a season, 5 games a season, 3 games a season. I think Alvarez has played 22 games this season, and Haaland has been fit almost all year. So even if Martial is to be a backup to a Kane or, as we're seeing, maybe an Osimhen next season, he's still got to stay fit. He's still got to be reliable. You've still got to get 30 games out of him. So hopefully Ten Hag basically just means whilst he's just coming back from injury, we have to take things a bit more easily. Another quote from him after the game last night, which I watched the highlights again last night when I got home and looked at a few individual highlights. And I think it was actually a good game from United. I know 1-0 at home to Brentford isn't particularly emphatic, and they had that big chance two big chances, and one of them I'll get to in a minute. But obviously De Gea did incredibly well in that 1v1 to stop them scoring their best chance. But really, they didn't have many chances. And I think United, stemming that flow of attacks, which is something they couldn't do at all against Newcastle, I think was really important. Because even in recent weeks, we saw it in the FA Cup, we saw it in the Europa League as well, where we're conceding chances. And we were slightly lucky not to concede goals. But I think yesterday, other than that one big chance, Brentford really barely created anything. I think that's a really good sign, actually, that we can still, kind of lock it down a little bit. However, there was a couple of big chances, and Ten Hag spoke about David De Gea again. It says, when you need David, he is there, and when you lose focus, mistakes can happen. Obviously talking about Martinez giving De Gea the ball from the goal kick, him sort of taking too long on it, hitting it against Ivan Toney, and the ball almost went in the net, went a few yards wide, but could have gone anywhere. He says we want to play as a machine, and don't make mistakes. We only make we make one mistake, and luckily they didn't benefit from it. Now, Jay made this point the other day. It's very, very rare that Ten Hag singles out individuals for criticism or for shining a light on a mistake that they've made. He's done it twice with De Gea now in about 3 weeks. I don't know if that's a sign of anything. I don't know whether that's... To me, that could be one of two things. One, he's saying he's not quite good enough, and look at, almost like Jose did, where he's like, look at who I've got to work with here, and maybe that's a message to the board. Or the other one is he knows we're not replacing David De Gea. He knows that he's too far down the list of necessary replacements, and that he will be here next season. And that is a message to De Gea directly to say, you cannot switch off. Here and there, when you lose focus, mistakes can happen. He's saying to De Gea, you're going to be our first choice keeper next season, whether I like it or not, and I don't mind it, but you cannot switch off. You cannot lose focus. David De Gea is a great goalkeeper when you're under fire. We saw it in those seasons where we played deep line counter-attacking football under Jose Mourinho in particular. We saw it under Van Gaal where we'd have good possession under Van Gaal, but we conceded a lot of chances. Obviously under Solskjaer as well, we would concede chances. De Gea shines in those types of teams where you're sitting back, you're taking a lot of shots, you're counter-attacking. But in a team where we want to have a lot more of the ball, you saw yesterday in the first half, I think we had 73% possession, which against a team in the top 7 is very impressive, even if you are at home. That's where you need De Gea to not switch off, and you need him to make the pass every time. You need him to, take his time, but not take too much time. Maybe he's going, come on, David, you can do better than this. And, maybe that's a little word for De Gea to say, next time, or, next season, we can't be having you losing concentration. We can't be having you giving the ball away because, if we want to control games and win trophies, then, we need a goalkeeper that we can rely on. Jay Coda says, not David's fault. I mean, it is his fault if he's taking too long kicking the ball at Ivan Toney and it goes in the back, almost goes in the back of the net. And I think Ten Hag can see that. Obviously, like I said, De Gea made a fantastic save in that 1v1. So, it wasn't a bad night for him overall. But I think obviously he's saying there we only really made one mistake in the game. And he's obviously referring to David De Gea because there's no other Davids in the team and he made a mistake. So you can't say it's not his fault. Santa Notch says, we could do with not passing it to De Gea from a goal kick if it puts him under pressure. Again, it's one of those things, and it's that catch-22 of you want to be a passing team, but then you want to sort of work around a flaw in that passing structure in David De Gea. Well, you're not a passing team then. So you can't have it both ways. You can't be a passing team that has a player in a crucial part of that team, which is the deepest line player in the team, who can see the entire pitch, who's always should be an outlet. If things are really hairy, if the defence is really getting pressed, the goalie should almost always be free. You can't have a player in that position as your out ball who can't be passed to because he struggles under pressure, because that's literally the whole point of having a passing team. You need a passing team, not just a passing 11, passing 10. But we'll see. Agaz Kapoor says, have you tried bunning your hair? I don't know if that's a formal procedure. I wear it up occasionally. I don't know if that's the same thing, but maybe wrapping it in a bun. No, I haven't done that. Right, let's move on. Just a quick look, actually. And I'm going to say something here that I think that people will disagree with and that people might laugh at. We just wanted to look at Frank Lampard because obviously it's not Manchester United news, but it is a supposed rival of United. Obviously not this season. They're in the bottom half at the moment, but Lampard as well always has this sort of link to United in that he and Solskjaer were always compared to each other. Lampard came in at Chelsea roughly the same time Solskjaer came in at United. Solskjaer outlasted him. I think, obviously had better finishes. I think Lampard won the FA Cup, didn't he? I believe he did. Let's have a look at that. We can, producer Ethan will double check that. But then he got sacked from Chelsea. Then he goes to Everton and gets sacked again. Now, he's come back in, or he's going to come back in as the head coach until the end of the season. As you can see there, David Ornstein, Chelsea have reached an agreement in principle to install Frank Lampard. I like install, like he's a bit of software on a computer. I'm just going to install Frank Lampard. Wait, just give him a minute. We're just downloading Frank Lampard. The internet's playing up. I'll install him and then we'll be on for next season. They're going to install him as the interim coach until the end of the season. 44-year-old Chelsea legend to be joined by assistants Ashley Cole, Joe Edwards, Chris Jones. Process for permanent appointment continues. Now, a lot of people are taking the piss out of this and looking at Frank Lampard's disastrous win ratio at almost every club he's ever been at and saying this is a bad idea. Lampard won nothing. Thank you. Good. Do you know what I'm confusing? I'm confusing Arteta. That's what I'm doing. I'm confusing Arteta thinking, I know one of these former players won something, but Lampard didn't win anything. Good. My first instant reaction is, ha 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 ha, what a stupid idea that is, because he's shit. But then I've got two follow-up points which kind of contradict myself and sort of common thought. One is, do you remember Ralph Rangnick? Because we went out and got who we thought was the most radical, the most exciting, the most high-intensity, high sort of philosophy manager we could find. Someone who invented the press, someone who speaks so well, someone who is part sort of lecturer, part manager, someone that can teach these players a philosophy and a genuine kind of technical side of football that they don't already have. And it was a disaster. I honestly think we would have been better having Michael Carrick to the end of the season than Ralph Rangnick in terms of wins, losses and draws. They've gone with a bang average manager here, but they've gone with a known quantity. And I honestly don't think that's the worst thing in the world. He can get Chelsea to win a few games. He's not very good, but he's not that bad. And when he was there, they had some all right finishes. He had some good arrangements and good sort of relationships with people like Mason Mount and, you know, a few players that came through the team at Chelsea. I don't think this is a bad idea. I think if his job, which all it is to take them through to the end of the season without any absolute disasters, I think he can do that. And I think he will have a better time at Chelsea than Ralph Rangnick did at United. And it pains me to say it because I think Frank Lampard is bang average. Now, the best case scenario, and we all know this, is that of these last sort of 10 games that he's got, he wins 8, draws 1, loses 1. Because then Chelsea have got two options. They either hire him on a permanent, which would be hilarious, or the new manager that comes in has to fight against the tide of everyone going, you've got to be better than Lampard, and he won all these games. Either way, it isn't good for Chelsea. So what we want is for him to come in, win a load of games, then finish like 6th or whatever, in out of sight, out of mind. Maybe give him a little lower level European competition to take a few games off him next season. Because the other point is, if they finish 11th and then they get in a Nagelsmann or a Pochettino or whoever it may be. Not that I don't think I would get either of them if I was a Chelsea owners, but let's say they do, a decent manager. They've got a free run at the FA Cup, the League Cup and the League next season without having to worry about those pesky European games. Chelsea, with the money they've spent, if they get a striker in, could be really difficult next season. So I would like them to just scrape European football, ideally Europa Conference League. That would be nice. But yeah, less said about Lampard the better. Zidane, another one, yeah, potentially. But who knows who they'll get. Tanaka says they were within the top 6 with him, yeah, with Lampard. Rodgers is better than Lampard, should have been him. But Rodgers isn't going to do 6 weeks on an interim, is he? Rodgers wants a permanent job. Pardon me, you would have thought. So yeah, people saying Lampard was brought in for vibes. But do you know something? That Chelsea team has absolutely lacked vibes. And vibes won't win you titles, but vibes can get you top 6. Genuinely. A team that is confident and happy and playing well and looking forward to playing every week will win games. They won't win trophies because you need more than that, but they'll win games. And it won't surprise me if Lampard can bring those big boy vibes that he talks about. I reckon they could finish this season quite strongly. And hopefully, like I said, finish 7th, get Europa Conference, and we'll see you in that top 6 fight again next season. But anyway, moving on. Manchester United's Napoli Raid. Look at this. We're raiding them. Just when they thought they were safe. Raided. Simple as that. You can't get unraided because we've raided you now. Look at this. 130 million. Bang. 39 million, which almost seems free compared to the aforementioned 130. Bang. Kim Min-Jae. Let's start with him. Very promising, up and coming. I say up and coming rather than young because he is 26, but he's very much hitting a stride at this stage of his career. Man United, Liverpool and Tottenham are among the European clubs keen on Napoli defender Kim Min-Jae, with Serie A leaders weighing up whether to remove the South Korean's £40 million release clause. We better do, because if there's a decent centre-back knocking about Europe's top 5 leagues, Norwich can afford a 40 million centre-back. Do you know what I mean? If he's any good, he's going to the Championship, let alone the Champions League. So if they want to get good money for him, get rid of that release clause. However, if you're Kim Min-Jae, you might not want it removing. Also, with the release clause, I don't think a player has to agree to a move, does he? His team that own the contract have to agree to it, have to say yes, but the player doesn't have to go. I don't think. Anyway, the Premier League trio are among the European clubs interested in the defender. The 26-year-old is said to favour a move to England if he leaves after just one season, which obviously makes him unproven, you could say, because after one season, before that he was at Fenerbahce, which again is another sort of notch down below the Serie A, the Turkish league. However, he's gone to Napoli and been absolutely excellent for him, playing basically every game for them this season. 27 games in Serie A so far, 36 in all competitions. Instrumental, one of their better players, and he looks to be someone that clearly a lot of teams are interested in. Spurs hold a slight advantage given the presence of international teammate Son Heung-min, but the emergence of Liverpool and United, as well as PSG and Bayern Munich, have given the player and his representatives many options. Napoli could look to remove the release clause set at £39 million. And it was 40 before. I love that. Football has skewed the world of money so much that we can just dismiss £1 million. That is, do you know the average person in Britain earns £1 million in their entire life? You've just flippantly removed an entire human average being's overall life earnings there, just for the sake of a headline. What do we have on ours? Cut to the wide. Come on. 39 million. So we look after the man in the street. None of this Daily Mail adding £1 million on for sex appeal by offering Kim Min-Jae a new contract less than 12 months after joining Fenerbahce for 15 million quid. I reckon if you've bought someone for 15 million and you're selling for 39 in one season, just let us have him. Just let him go, unless he's going to Tottenham, because I think he'd be good there. But he's a good player, very physical player, someone that seems to obviously understand the Serie A very well, is part of this team that is battering everyone except AC Milan, who battered them last week. But typically, it's been a very good season for Napoli. And again, I'll say my warning again, I'm not going to keep doing this, and I'm sure you've seen me say it before, but every few years, every 3 or 4 years, there is a team like Napoli. In the past, we've seen Leicester in England. We've seen Monaco in France. We've seen Dortmund in Germany back in 2012 or whatever it was under Klopp when they were winning leagues. We have seen Porto in Portugal, the one that won the Champions League. We see these teams that overachieve, that come out of nowhere. I know Porto didn't come out of nowhere, but for them to win the Champions League was an extra step above just winning leagues like they usually do. And what happens is that they get picked apart. You get, out of Leicester, you'll get a Mahrez. Vardy didn't go in the end, but people wanted him. You'll get these players. You'll get Kante picked out. In all of these teams, there are a few absolute gems. But there is also 6 or 7 players in all of these teams that are not pulling the weight that the rest of them are. And what can happen is, no offence to Danny Drinkwater, but Chelsea buy Danny Drinkwater for 30 million quid, thinking he was part of a midfield with Kante that barely conceded any goals and won the league with Leicester. Let's get him. And he plays 1 game in 3 years or whatever Danny Drinkwater played. And I'm not saying that's the case with Kim Min-Jae, I'm not saying that's the case with Osimhen, but I haven't watched enough of this Napoli team to separate the wheat from the predictably there will be plenty of chaff. And United's scouting department, which I don't really trust that much, is now having to, every other scouting department in Europe who's looking at this team thinking we can probably get some bargains here, make sure you get the Kylian Mbappe from Monaco, not the Benjamin Mendy, yeah? Because, and I mean that on the pitch, because there's always, for every 2 really good players, there are 3 players who were just carried along by the good players. Mahrez and Kante at Leicester, fantastic. But if you get Robert Huth thinking he's going to be a top-class centre-back, that's not the truth, is it? We all know that. So hopefully Kim Min-Jae is one that, is instrumental, isn't just part of the team. He looks to be a very good player. But again, this is where our scouting department needs to separate your Drinkwaters from your Kantés. Because, these exciting young teams, and we've said it before, you look at the players out of that Borussia Dortmund team, Hummels and Lewandowski, world class. Nuri Sahin, when he goes to Liverpool and barely gets a game, not quite so much. So that's the trickier thing, isn't it? Gaz Drinkwater's cousin, I think he might be actually, Danny Drinkwater. Matt Wick says, the thing is, a lot of the time the overachievement is down to having a collection of real quality players exactly aligning with the team at once. That's the case with Napoli. Exactly, yeah. Kim, Kvara and Osimhen are genuine bona fide ballers, hopefully. But that's the thing. We've got to separate the Joes from the Smiths. As Joe Curry is saying there, and I couldn't agree more. Let's move on to the other one then. The other Napoli star, Osimhen, private talks. Sounds like you can hire him for the evening to do a little after-dinner speech. According to CBS reporter Ben Jacobs, you know him, Osimhen is a player on United's radar. Who is Ben Jacobs? Is he? Big journalist. And it's claimed that the Nigeria international has already talked about a potential move with the Red Devils with Odion Ighalo, who previously spent a year in Manchester. Osimhen has spoken to Odion Ighalo, who was at Manchester United in the past. Love that, just exactly repeating the chapter before, and was very impressed by what he heard. Osimhen, I love that. Thank you, Odion, by the way. Cheers for just your consistent and insistent love and support of Manchester United. Odion, we love you. Osimhen just felt like he'd be too far down in the pecking order and needed some time, game time, if he joined then. Sorry, that was when we talked about him in the past. Okay, how long ago was that? So the fact that there are pre-existing links between United and Osimhen, and now the club are flying under Erik ten Hag, will give Manchester United a lot of hope. Agent Odion doing the work for Manchester United. Now, there was one thing that was never in doubt when Odion Ighalo was at United, is that he was a United fan. So I like to think that, yes, he had these chats a few years ago, pardon me, but I think he's back in there. I think we saw Ighalo talking recently about Osimhen as well, saying how good a player he was, saying that this world-class talent, world-class potential. And now we're starting to see it at Napoli. And yeah, like I said, there's some good players in that team. And you would think the one that's scoring all the goals is pretty much a banker in terms of, being able to translate that to the Premier League. However, there's always those doubts, isn't there? A young player coming from another league, coming into the Premier League, you're never quite sure what you're going to get. And the hit rate of strikers from Serie A coming to the Premier League, first of all, it doesn't happen that often, somehow. And second of all, you often get players like Danny Osvaldo, or who's the other one who went, Giaccherini, who went to Southampton and was great for a month. Should have scored a hat-trick against Manchester United in the FA Cup, but actually kind of fizzled out. It's one of those leagues, isn't it, where, for whatever reason, strikers from Serie A, give me in the comments, let me know a list of Serie A strikers that have come to the Premier League and been a success. Graziano Pella is another one. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying because it doesn't happen very often, it can't happen. We've all spoken about the Bundesliga in the past as a tricky transition, and then you see Haaland blasting records away. But you're talking about a striker in Erling Haaland that isn't just like a decent striker in the Bundesliga. He scores a goal every game, every single match of his entire professional career. He's done it consistently all the time. Usually, when there's a good option and an obvious one, the comments are rife. I'm looking at these comments, and the last one people can say is Vialli. That was in 1996. When did Vialli go to Chelsea? That was in the 90s. People say Lukaku. He didn't come from Italy, did he? Before that, he came back. Zola, Di Canio. What is this? This is 25 years ago. How has there not been a decent striker from Serie A come to the Premier League? Actually, do you know the best one? Zlatan at United. I know he didn't come straight there. He came by a PSG, but he played in Italy at least. Honestly, the hit rate is diabolical. Balotelli's one, but you won't call him a success at City. I know he won trophies and had a few good games, but it wasn't like a, wow, look at Balotelli. He was always a missed potential kind of guy. That is unbelievable, isn't it? Shevchenko, bad at Chelsea. Actually, you look at Shevchenko's goal-scoring record, it's not that bad. But when you watched him play at the time, he was not considered a success. But Osimhen is just a different breed. He may well be. I'm not saying just because, he's a different player to all of those players. I'm just saying the track record and the hit rate, strikers from Italy coming to the Premier League, is weak at best. People saying Crespo, he was absolutely not a success at Chelsea. Cavani, again, via PSG, but he did all right, didn't he, for that first season? Hardly a success, though. Anyway, Abdul says, don't forget Italian football fell off a cliff for 20 years, so all the talent went to other leagues. It did, but Italian football was the best in the world or thereabouts until about 2007. You know what I mean? That AC Milan team with Kaká in was phenomenal. Since then, they've struggled, but you've seen Juventus in the Champions League final 2 or 3 times. It's not been at the same level, but neither is the Portuguese league. But I could list you, players from Benfica alone that have been successful. The French league is another one. It's quite common to get decent, good strikers from the French league. However, they're not winning Champions Leagues. Other than PSG, no one's even got close in recent seasons. So it's not just about the strength of the league. It's about the play style and lots of different things. But anyway, Crespo was class. He wasn't class at Chelsea. So he was class in Italy. Phenomenal player, but he was not class at Chelsea. Anyway, finally, before we move on, the Glazers, you know them. Further negotiations over the sale of Man United due in the coming days. Some in European football believe they won't sell. Others believe a deal could be negotiated. So, very much two sides of a coin there, isn't it? Some think they'll sell, some think they won't sell. Alex Shaw really covering all bases there. Offers of $5 billion are believed to have been tabled already for the deal, which would obliterate the record purchase for a sports team, which I believe is $3.5 billion for the Dallas Cowboys. So yeah, we're looking, well north of that figure. Again, here's the news. Some think they'll sell, some think they won't. Can't give you any more than that. But it looks as though, to me, as he said there, if they didn't sell, there'd be riots. And they know that. That's the other thing to remember in all of this. They know what the 6 weeks after them not selling looks like. And it is disastrous. If they now say, we've decided, as we always said, the strategic whatever is going to turn into us actually not selling the club, it would be a disaster for them. And if you think people getting on the pitch before the Liverpool game was bad, wait and see what happens if they don't sell now. So yeah, it was the Denver Broncos, not the Dallas Cowboys, that sold for $3.75 billion. Pardon me. Right, that's going to be all from us this morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Get your thoughts in the comments below as well. Do you like these two Napoli stars? Obviously, first big season for both of them. Kim Min-Jae's his first season at Napoli, let alone his first, big season. So, do you think they would suit Manchester United? Are they good enough for Manchester United? Do you want to pay that price tag right there for Victor Osimhen? Let me know in the comments below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back in a little bit as well later today for a tier review, looking at all these transfers. Kim Min-Jae, Victor Osimhen, a lot of others as well. Who should go? Who should stay? Full transfer tier list with me and Stephen Howson coming this afternoon, so make sure you check that out. We'll see you in a bit.